Servers are going to crash, servers are going to get overloaded, servers are turned off for maintenance. Code can cause the server to not operate properly. And when all of these kinds of things happen, your server is going to return an error instead of returning your website. And not surprisingly, if your website's returning an error instead of your actual content, it can cause problems for SEO. Now, the thing is, server errors tend to be temporary. Something went wrong, you start working on figuring out what went wrong to get your website back online. And during that period where your website is temporarily offline, we want to make sure we communicate that correctly to robots. That way, robots from search engines that are coming to your website and crawling understand that this is just a temporary state and that they should come back later. But if you don't communicate this correctly to search engine robots, then you can end up causing some real severe long-term impacts to your website's SEO performance. So let's talk through how you can properly handle server errors on your website and how we can communicate this server error correctly to search engine robots to prevent those long-term problems. So server errors are communicated to robots via a status code. A status code is a numerical number sent by the server to indicate the state of a requested page. A status code that communicates a server error starts with the number 5. There are several different types of server errors, and all of these fall within the 5XX class of status codes. So the first thing we need to make sure of is that our server sends the right status code when it encounters an error. That means the status code needs to be within the 5XX class. If you return a status 200 with a server error, then robots aren't going to understand that there actually is an error. A status 200 says everything is okay, so a robot who sees an error message on your website and a status code of 200 might just assume that that error message is your actual content. That's where you start running into some of these long-term problems. And we have several different status codes we can use to describe different kinds of server errors. There's a 500 or 500 response code. This is the most generic response code to use in the event of a server error. It's very generic, but it still communicates that an error has occurred. Where possible, though, you want to use something more specific. That way you're specifically telling robots what to do and what went wrong. That way they can handle it correctly. A 501 indicates that the server failed because the functionality requested isn't available yet. This isn't very commonly used. It's not explicitly supported by Googlebot or clear if they do anything specifically with it. A 502 indicates the server received an invalid response. For example, Cloudflare received a request for a file, but they couldn't fetch that file from the website's server. A 503 indicates the website is down from maintenance or is currently overloaded. This is the most common status code to use for server errors, and in almost all cases should be the status code that you are using for server errors. Now with the 503, you can also return something called a Retry-After header. So a Retry-After header indicates when the service will be returned. So if the server is down for maintenance and you know it's going to be back up in 2 hours, you can state in the Retry-After the time that this will be back up. When Googlebot encounters a server error with a proper status code returned, it will temporarily reduce the crawl rate. And so long as the server error is only returned temporarily, Google will not remove the page from the index or the rankings. You have a window to work with where you can get your server back online, and Google is not going to penalize your website long term. Now, the next question is, how do we track server errors on our website and if Google's encountering server errors on our website or not? I've come across a lot of websites where they never knew that the website was down, that there were any server errors being returned, and yet you start looking into it and realize, oh, Google's been crawling lots of server errors on this website. So we can find these in Google Search Console's crawl stats report. So in the sidebar, click on Settings and then click Open Report next to Crawl Stats. On the main Crawl Stats page, scroll down to the crawl request breakdown and see if you have server error 5XX listed. If you do find 5XX, go ahead and click on it, and then this will load the 5XX report. You can see a graph showing how many times Google has encountered 5XX errors. If you scroll down, you can view a list of example URLs, and you can investigate these example URLs to see what's going on and why server errors are occurring, especially if you didn't already know that those server errors are occurring on your website. If you have any questions or need help understanding server errors, please get in touch. You can email me at matthew@elementive.com or leave a comment. If you liked this video, please subscribe for more videos like this from Elementive. Thank you for watching.